This question was asked on my YouTube channel. I'm a fairly new follower. Been watching your videos for 3 days, and I caught the live feed on your YouTube on Sunday when you were sharing your testimony in Southern Indiana. Can I get the full story about your Amish father? Yeah, I will do an updated video here concerning my father real quick for all of you new followers that don't know my story. My whole story is in my book, Undeceived, which can be found on eliyoder.com, where I share everything, the whole story from beginning to the end, how I grew up Old Order Amish. Now, my daddy, he was shunned a lot when I was growing up Amish. He became very depressed. It all started when his mom, my grandmother, left the Amish when he was just a little 4-year-old Amish boy. Never really got to see her, know her when I was growing up Amish, because they told us that, she had left the Amish and gave herself over to the devil, over to the world, because she disagreed with the Amish religion and left. So that's all I knew. I just thought she was going to hell because she's a bad person for leaving. Now, my dad clearly was a depressed man. He got shunned a lot, drank a lot of alcohol. Alcohol is not allowed in the Amish community where I'm from. So he got shunned for that. That did not really affect him a whole lot. So he kept on drinking, and I feared him most of my life. I'll be honest with you. I think me and all of my siblings, there was 10 of us, 7 boys, 3 girls, 2 sets of twins. We were all naturally born at home by Dad. Dad did the delivery, and a couple times he said he used a midwife to help. We all feared Dad. I think all of my siblings would agree that at one point at an especially young age, we did fear our father. We went through a lot of physical abuse. He had a lot of anger, rage. Lots of times on Sundays coming home is when it was the worst, because the church would approach him with different things that they heard about him, breaking dress code rules or whatever have you. And so we saw a really angry father. I feared him all of my life until I was probably 13, 14 is when I started being able to go with him here and there. Mom didn't want me and my brothers to go with him do construction because he was always drinking a lot. So when I got to go with him, it was a lot of fun. We broke some rules together, and Dad was a wild one. And so I started establishing kind of somewhat a relationship with him, but never to the point where I could open myself up to share my feelings with him. To share with him about what bothered me, what's on my heart. So I still very much bottled up a lot in here to try to make sure that he doesn't know how I felt about him and all of that. But I did establish a little bit of a relationship with him. And then when I left the Amish, I knew it bothered him. I knew he didn't want me to leave. But I also knew that he was rejoicing. He was happy for me, because that's what he was longing for, was happiness. He wanted to be free. And I wanted to do everything I could to help him be free if he wanted to be free. If you know what I mean? And so he was being shunned. I'm now ex-Amish. I left. I go out and I see him even without Amish clothing on, because he really didn't care. I could come into the curve of the driveway. Our driveway came in and curved. So right at that curve, I would stop, and Dad would come meet me and my wife. Now I was just dating my wife at that time. And he would come out and meet us there. Mom had a rule: do not come out without Amish clothing on, and do not bring the car on the property. Well, Dad said, who cares what she says or the church says? Come into the curve in the driveway. I'll come out and talk to you. So we did that quite often. And then one time we visited, and he said that he had been injured. He was walking real funny. He was in a lot of pain. He was at a Amish barn raising, and he had gotten injured. And he had a messed up back, vertebrae, I think, was broken or whatever. So he was staying home rather than going to church. So therefore, I took advantage of that to go out and see him on those Sundays when he stayed home from church. And then he said he wanted to leave the Amish. Well, I didn't want to believe him, because I reminded him that when I was just a little Amish boy, that he had one time came home from doing construction and whacked his Amish beard off, whacked all his hair off. I mean, he looked like an English guy. And I said, you didn't leave. I mean, we thought you were done. You were moving on and not being Amish anymore because you whacked everything off. I mean, cutting your beard is a huge, it's like an unforgivable sin. They didn't take him back into the church. They shunned him the whole time, like 9 months, 10 months, until his beard was fully grown, grew back out, because it's a religious symbol in the Amish that represents marriage. And so he got rid of that, and that's a huge no-no. So I reminded him of that. I said, Dad, when I was a little Amish boy, you wasn't serious. You whacked all that off, and you looked like an Englisher, but you didn't leave. And he says, no, I'm serious. And a couple Sundays later, when me and my wife went back out, he actually set a date and time. And I'm like, oh, now you got my attention. Now it's not just words, it's ready to act. It's ready to act on it rather than just talk. And so I'm like, wow, okay, all righty. So I made plans to help my daddy. Me and my wife went out, and we on a Saturday. This is in June 2003. This was 5 years after I had left the Amish. I'm very excited, and I was going to make sure Dad is taken care of. I knew he had, depression, alcoholism, all of that. But hey, this is my chance to have a relationship with him. I'll deal with all of that. I'll deal with the depression. We'll help him. Instead of rejecting him or shunning him, let's just help him. Let's love on him. I mean, if we love on him, then he'll probably overcome, was my idea. So on Saturday, we made the plans to go to the car dealership and get a vehicle because Dad was going to leave the next morning on Sunday at 9 a.m. And so we were like excited, and we're going to get a bigger vehicle. And during that transaction, or whatever you want to call it, trying to get it to go through the bank, hadn't cleared yet, I got a gruesome phone call that my dad had ended it all. You know what I mean? I can't use the S word because of the algorithm on the video, but he unalived himself. That stunned me. I've often wrestled with why. I'm the only one that's not Amish. Why would he follow, me? Yeah, it's freedom. I thought for sure he sees the freedom I have. He sees how happy I am. Surely he would want that. So I believed it. But I also think he was wrestling with the whole, I got all the other 10 siblings. I love them too. He was probably very confused on what to do. And he chose that route. So that's the story with my daddy. He was not done right away on the act of unaliving himself, and they found him praying. He was praying and asking the Lord to forgive him and all of that. And a couple days later in the hospital, he did pass away after the church came to visit, and a lot of the family was gathered. I had to put Amish clothing on to go there, at the hospital. And then eventually they said, no, we got to get the life support off because they don't want computer technology to keep a human being alive. But they did allow it to be on my dad long enough to get all the family, in from other states, other Amish communities, hiring taxi drivers to travel to the hospital. And I just remember standing there with my Amish clothes on, and just the room, there was so many family members. We got a large family. My dad comes from a large family. My grandpa, he comes from a family of 20 children. So you have a lot of family coming in, and in the room where my dad was laying on with life support was just full. You couldn't get more people in there. And that's when they made the decision to remove it. And as soon as they removed the life support, my daddy was gone. They did bury him separately because that is an act of pretty much an unforgivable sin if you take control of your own life to control when you go or not. And that is considered a murder, unforgivable sin. So they did bury him separately in the opposite corner. I have a lot of videos on my social media showing the tombstone where Dad is buried by himself. I also did a lot of videos when I was adding flowers and the Amish kept destroying them. And then I put up cameras. I got some viral videos on TikTok where it got 20-some million views showing how I was putting up the cameras and all of that. So a lot of you guys know my story, but this is an updated for all of you new followers. That is the story of my father, and I almost had him out of the Amish this close, and it just didn't work. But I want to say this before I wrap it up. If something like that happened for you, I want to encourage you to let it go. For a long time, I demanded an answer for why. And then I realized that I can live at peace and have joy and happiness in my heart if I don't demand why. Because for the longest time when this happened, I used to take a case of beer out, lean on my daddy's tombstone, drink half the case and dump the other half the case down into the ground and drink with my father. But the next morning, as I would wake up from my hangover with a pounding headache, it dawned on me that didn't bring my daddy back. I was destroying my life and even tried crack cocaine eventually. It was destroying me. So I want to remind you, don't let the past destroy your future. If you have something you would really like to know why, it's better off to let it go and not ask why. and just allow the peace of Christ to live in your heart and move forward. That's why Jesus died on the cross. Just surrender it and give it to him. He wants to take it. All of you who are weary and heavy laden, he will give you rest. You can't get rest if you demand why. If you want answers, sometimes you just have to let it go. And now I'm happy. I have joy and peace in my heart going forward. And if you want to learn the rest of my story and the rest of what happened to my daddy, it's found in my book, Undeceived. And you can find it on eliyoder.com. It's also online at all the online bookstores, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart.com, all of that. You can find it on all of those online bookstores. Also on my website, eliyoder.com, you will also see the schedule of when I will be speaking in your neck of the woods. I got a whole bunch of churches in different states on there where I will be talking about this entire story. So make sure you check it out, eliyoder.com.